In 1717, a pastor named Richard Sackett received a land grant for the land this house sits on. His family held it for 150 years. One room in this house still carries their name. This episode is about the top floor of Stanton House Inn. 2 rooms, same origin story, and 2 completely different ideas about what a room should be. Now, if you don't know who I am, my name is Colin Pearson. I'm a 4th generation innkeeper at Stanton House Inn in Greenwich, Connecticut. Every room in this house had a life before it was a guest room. This series is about those lives. In the first episode, I walked you through 3 rooms my family actually lived in. My parents' bedroom, my childhood bedroom, and the TV room behind the kitchen. This episode goes to the top floor. The 3rd floor of this house was the servants' floor. 5 small rooms, 1 shared bathroom. My parents changed that. 5 rooms became 2 guest rooms, each with its own private bathroom. Today, I want to walk you through both of them. Room 30 and Room 32, and explain how 2 completely different rooms came out of the same origin story. Room 30 is the Sackett Suite. It's not a honeymoon suite. It's not a special occasion room. It's an apartment at the top of the house. A king bedroom and a separate sitting area divided by glass French doors. 2 real rooms, actual separation. And it's the only room in this house named for the family that owned this land for 150 years. In 1717, Richard Sackett received a land grant here in Greenwich while serving as pastor at Second Congregational Church, which is right down the street. His family held that land for 150 years. In 1840, John Sackett built the original structure on this site. The house has changed hands and names many times since then. Room 30 carries the Sackett name. When a guest sleeps in that room, they're sleeping at the top of the house, built on Sackett land, in a room named for the family that owned it longer than anyone else, mine included. No other room in this house can say that. The southwest dormers in room 30 look toward the steeple of that same church Richard Sackett served, the one that's been on that corner since before America was a country. Now, before I get into what we've done with this room, you need to know what this floor actually was. The 3rd floor belonged to the household staff. 5 small rooms, 1 shared bathroom, low ceilings, narrow hallways. That was the arrangement, all the way into the 1990s. My parents looked at that and made a decision. 5 rooms became 2. 1 shared bath became 2 private bathrooms. And here's the detail that tends to surprise people. The whirlpool tub in room 30, it sits in the exact footprint of that original shared servant bathroom. The staff who worked in this house had 1 bathroom between all of them. Now it's a whirlpool for 2. I think they'd appreciate the upgrade. The most recent refresh was about atmosphere, not amenities. The whirlpool was already there. The 2 rooms were already there. What I worked on was how the room feels. The dominant wall color is a warm grayish that does something specific and special at dusk. It warms up. That's exactly when guests arrive and start settling in, and that's when the room should look its best. I chose it for that reason. I wanted a color that earns its keep at the hour that matters most. The brass king bed was a modern choice on purpose. I wanted something contemporary enough that the antiques could rest against it without the room feeling like a museum. The antique dresser is one of the oldest pieces in the house, actually. The brass bed earns its place next to it precisely because it doesn't compete. The wingback chair in the sitting room came out of a home in Old Lyme. Classic New England pattern, a bird in a tree eating berries. It's the kind of chair that looks like it's always belongs somewhere old. It fits this room perfectly. And then the French doors. The glass French doors between the rooms are the whole point. One person can sleep, the other can read, nobody has to whisper. I considered a heavier divider a solid door, something more traditional, but the glass was the right call. It gives you separation without cutting off the light. Room 30 is for guests who want real space, not hotel lobby space, not here's a love seat in the corner space. 2 rooms, glass French doors, actual separation. It's the room for couples who've been in the same square footage for 48 hours and need to exist in different zones without it being a negotiation. One person naps, the other reads. Nobody has to perform togetherness every minute. It's also, and this is worth saying out loud, the best cold weather room in the house. When it's snowing outside, the sloped ceilings are pressing in and the walls are going warm under lamplight, all while there's a whirlpool 10 feet from the king bed. That room becomes something else entirely. If you're staying more than one night, this is the room people are happiest they chose. Room 30 is for the guest who wants to settle in, not check in. Third floor, no elevator. The quiet up here is the kind you have to climb to enjoy. Room 30 went southwest. 2 rooms, pool views, the Sackett name. Room 32 went the other direction entirely. And it has a view that most guests stay here and never even realize exists. Room 32 is the northwest corner of the 3rd floor. It's a single room king with a dedicated lounge and workspace, leather armchairs, and an antique secretary desk. Same floor as room 30, completely different room. When my parents divided the 3rd floor, the northwest corner became the smaller of the 2 guest bedrooms. More intimate. Single king instead of 2 rooms. Northwest light. Quieter, more inward, less showy than the south-facing rooms. The story I picked for room 32 was the governess's room. Not grand, not performative. The room at the top of the house that belongs to someone trusted, thoughtful, and slightly apart from the main house's social orbit. The sloped ceilings aren't a quirk. They're the proof that the space was remade with intention from something that used to be spare and functional. Unusual proportions aren't a limitation. They're what makes the room feel like it was found rather than built. And then there's the view. The dormer window looks down onto the back garden and the vine-covered ruins of the back gardens. Old stone, scrambling vines. In spring they flower. Many guests stay here and miss this view. And yet it's one that makes people go quiet for a second. I don't describe it as a garden view. That undersells it. It is a view of something that used to mean something, a structure that outlasted whatever it was built to contain. There's something about that view that fits this room perfectly. The brass bed in room 32 is the room's most deliberately modern statement. Same logic as room 30. The antiques need something contemporary to rest against, or the room tips from collected into museum. The brass bed says this house is still evolving. The antique secretary desk migrated up from room 16 during the most recent refresh. Room 16, my parents' old bedroom, if you watched the first episode, didn't need it anymore. Room 32 did. We brought it upstairs in the spring and set it by the dormer. It fit immediately. Didn't even have to think about it. That's how old houses furnish themselves. Things migrate to where they belong. In 5 years, that desk will look like it's always been there. The 2 leather armchairs form a lounge cluster. A green leather ottoman between them, a small stone accent table alongside. Real seating for actual use. The leather will age into the room. Give it 10 years and they'll be the piece guests mention. I intentionally pick chairs that are a little lighter too, so you can move one or both over to the window if you prefer to admire that view. The walls are a warm off-white that works with northwest light rather than fighting it. The secondary color is a deep gray-green that gives the room its serious backbone. Under lamplight in the evening, the combination does something quiet and beautiful. The off-white warms, the gray-green deepens. The botanical pillows glow slightly. That's the version of the room guests will remember. The art tells a quiet, bookish story. Architectural prints, a cathedral sketch, a European city scene. Nothing decorative, nothing loud, the kind of art a thoughtful person would own. That was the target. A room that doesn't perform. A room you disappear into. There's a design principle in this room that I want to name out loud, because I think it applies more broadly. The rooms that stay with people aren't always the most spectacular. They're the ones that feel right from the inside. Room 32's character comes from what it doesn't do. It doesn't shout, it doesn't perform. It sits at the top of the house with a brass bed and views of the ruins and leather chairs that will get better with age. And it waits for the right guest to find it. Restraint is a design choice. In this room, it's the whole strategy. Room 32 is for 2 kinds of guests, and they often don't know which one they are until they're already there. The first is couples on a quiet escape, not the big romantic gesture trip, the trip where you want to exist somewhere beautiful without narrating it for anyone. 2 people who know how to be in a room together will feel it immediately. The second is the reflective solo traveler, the writer, the person who needs to decompress. The secretary desk, the northwest light, the garden below, the leather chairs. This room landed exactly right for that guest. I picture the guest who arrives, drops their bag, opens the dormer window, hears the garden below, and doesn't check their phone for the rest of the afternoon. If you're deciding between rooms, this is the one people come back for. Room 32 is the room you book to disappear into. Third floor, no elevator. The quiet up here is the kind you have to earn a little. 2 rooms, same floor, same origin story, 5 servant rooms, 1 shared bath, a family that ran a house, and another family's life. What my parents built up there are 2 spaces that have nothing in common except being next door to each other. Room 30 went southwest. It got bigger, it got the Sackett name, and the pool view and the whirlpool and the footprint of the old communal bath. Room 32 went northwest. It got quieter, it got the garden and the ruins and the governess room energy that makes it feel like a room at the top of the house always should. I think about the people who worked in those 5 servant rooms would make of all of this. Probably something fairly wry, but I like to think they'd approve. If one of these rooms feels like yours, you'll find photos and booking details linked below. And if you want to keep seeing how we think about this old house, there are a lot more rooms with stories I'd like to tell. Thanks for watching.